It's time for the Double Stop with Brian Sword.
Welcome to the Double Stop Podcast. I'm Brian Sword. On this week's show, I have Vinnie Moore. Vinnie was one of the first wave of 80s guitar shredders, and he's been in UFO for over a decade. He's just released a new CD, Red Zone Rider, with Kelly Keeling and Scott Coogan. Now, Vinnie tells us all about his career, including an idea he's been tossing around for an album with multiple singers. Plus, he explains just how Pepsi made his fingers famous. This week, it's all about Vinnie Moore.
I am from Newcastle, Delaware, on the East Coast, and my family was really into listening to music, but no one really played an instrument.
And what kind of music were they all into then?
Just whatever was like pop music at the time. You know, when I grew up, I was hearing things on the radio like Motown, stuff like that. Just all the hit stuff of the late 60s and the 70s. And my dad was into some older stuff like the Frank Sinatras and that kind of thing. So I heard a little bit of that growing up too. And Elvis. But, mainly it was just pop music.
And when did you get your first instrument?
I got my first instrument for Christmas, actually, and I guess it was 77. Yeah, probably 1977.
Was it a guitar?
Yep. First guitar.
And was that an instrument that you took to right away, or did it sit around and collect some dust for a while?
I tried right away, but got frustrated pretty quickly because I was really psyched about getting the guitar, and I just envisioned that I was going to be, picking it up and pretty quickly playing leads, and I would hear things on the radio, like guitar solos, and I think, I'm going to be playing that soon, and, which was stupid. And then I got the guitar, and I thought, wait a minute, this is way harder than, I thought it was. So
was it an electric or an acoustic?
It was an electric, and I went to get some lessons, and after the first lesson, I was so frustrated I wanted to quit because I couldn't even hold the guitar without it falling off my leg. And luckily, I went home, and I practiced the stuff my teacher gave me for the week, and I came back totally prepared, and it was almost like a different kid coming in for lesson number 2. So I'm glad I didn't quit.
And when you started picking it up and you started getting somewhere with, your second lesson onward, did you become obsessive about it, or did it take some time?
I didn't become obsessive right away, but gradually I got more and more obsessive. And I think after about maybe a year and a half of playing, that's when I really became obsessive and, not only practiced every day, but it had to be like 2 hours a day. And then from there, it just grew and grew and grew to like 7 or 8 hours a day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what were some of your early players that you really liked?
Well, I started playing guitar because of guys like Brian May, Richie Blackmore, and Jimmy Page. And soon after that, I heard Jeff Beck because he was coming to town. There was a radio ad, and I heard the ad, and I heard some cool guitar, so I went out and bought his record. So I became a Jeff Beck fan. So it's probably those 4 guys were the first.
And what early bands did you start up?
I just started playing with some friends, just doing cover tunes and playing bar chord songs, whatever popular tunes of the day, some Free, some Bad Company, just the typical stuff.
And throughout your high school years, was it all about bands and music, and were you trying to make something happen?
It was totally about guitar, yeah. And I was in cover bands playing out, doing these gigs at clubs, which was really exciting. But, like, the older I got, the more I wanted to write my own music. And the guys I was playing with just didn't see that, They thought on a local level, and they thought, you play cover songs, you get gigs. But I was thinking beyond that, like, yeah, that's cool, but you're never going to go any further than that unless you write your own music. And so I started really trying to develop my own style and trying to write my own tunes. So at a certain point, I had to quit the band because we just weren't seeing things on the same level.
And how old were you been around then?
I believe I was about 17.
Now that's around the age where you're finishing up your high school years. Did you go off to some guitar college, or did you start playing bands?
No, I just practiced like 7 to 9 hours a day, and I bought a 4-track recorder and just started writing and recording ideas and, listening to different styles of music and different players, trying to educate myself that way. And I did take lessons for a while with a guy who was teaching me some cool stuff about musical theory and whatnot. But, I just spent a lot of time and worked on honing my craft.
Would Vicious Rumors be your first break, or was it the Pepsi commercial?
The Pepsi commercial came first.
Pepsi Commercial was first?
Yeah, I was in Spotlight for New Talent and Guitar Player magazine. And from that, I got the Pepsi commercial. And, I had been talking to Mike Varney, who writes that column and also has Shrapnel Records, about doing a record. And, early on, we didn't know what the record was going to be. And he just so happened to have this band that lived near him that he was going to do a record with, and they needed a guitar player, and that was Vicious Rumors.
Now, let's talk about the Pepsi commercial for a second, because it kind of blew my mind when I found out that it was you playing, because the guitar player in the commercial is the guitar player from Honeymoon Suite.
Correct.
And so, which, he's an unaccomplished player, and I still don't understand how it happened that you came in, recorded all this stuff, and then they get the guy from Honeymoon Suite to actually do the commercial. What was the process on that? And you were probably like 20 years old or something, right? So that must have been a pretty exciting experience.
Yeah, 19 or 20, yeah. I mean, I got a call about it on an evening, I forget, it was a weekday evening, about 6 o'clock, and by the next morning I was on a plane to Los Angeles, and basically I went to audition for the part. And, I was doing the acting in the audition also, and so, I was trying to get the full part, the music and being in the video, but, I think I was just too young and shy and like a little overwhelmed and intimidated by this whole Hollywood thing that I just got nervous, and so, but they liked my playing, luckily, so I did get to create the music part for the commercial.
And they still filmed your fingers too, right?
Exactly. I mean, the initial plan was that Derry Graham from Honeymoon Suite auditioned, and he got the part for the video, and they wanted me to teach him the licks that I created, the solos, and he was going to do the hand shots, but it didn't quite work out, and he was like, man, I'm not going to be able to learn this stuff. It's better if you do the hand shots. So I used to always joke about my hands are famous, and I'd hold up my hands in front of an audience going, see, don't you recognize them?
Now, was that just an interesting opportunity, or did that actually open any doors afterwards for you?
It was an interesting opportunity. I think it helped me, and that it helped create a buzz about me. Like, oh, this kid from Delaware is a really good player. He just did a Pepsi commercial. Pepsi was huge at the time. It was like Michael Jackson was doing Pepsi commercials, so it was just a big thing. Helped create a big buzz.
Yeah.
It was definitely, and some momentum, so it was definitely good.
And Mike Varney must have loved it.
Yes, he definitely did.
So tell me about the experience of Vicious Rumors then. So it's a band that Mike had already signed, and they were preparing to make an album, so he dropped you in. Is that how it happened?
Right. They were looking for a guitar player. He had been wanting to do a record with me. He was going to do a record with them, and so it's just like kind of fell into place. He recommended me, and they sent me some of their demos, and with a singer named Mark Tate, actually, who they had before Gary St. Pierre. And, I really liked it, and basically went out there to do some rehearsing and do the record, which I was told was going to take 3 weeks. But, actually when I got out there, these guys all had jobs, and they were working every day, and we only get to rehearse at night, like maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and it just kept dragging on, and ended up taking more than 4 months until we were done the record. And, I'm this 19, 20-year-old kid that's just homesick and wanted to get home like as soon as possible.
So you did the album, you recorded it, but you didn't really hang out in the band very long after that, did you?
Well, what happened is I loved Mark Tate, their original singer, and by the time I got out there, they had a different singer. And not only did they have a different singer, but the band was changing they were getting heavier and heavier, and the thrash thing was just starting to hit. And, you know, they were following in that, following the thrash thing, and they wanted to get heavier and heavier, and it all of a sudden became something different than what I thought it was initially. So then it became a matter of, well, do I just, like, go home, and say I'm not into this anymore, or just hang in there and do the record, and then maybe there could be some tour dates. And so I just hung in there, and, it just never turned into anything more than that.
Yeah, I guess when you're that young, it's a recording project, it's still an opportunity that you can't really feel like you can pass up.
Right, and I mean, even Mike Varney at the record label was saying, hey, you committed to this, you have to see it through now.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did that record. It was a great experience. It was great working with those guys. I'm glad they went on to have some success. But yeah, they were just growing in a different direction than me. And we hadn't even done the first record yet.
Right, yeah. So you finished the record up, and then is that when you started working on Mind's Eye?
I went home, and there was some talk about them going to Europe to tour, and I was pretty receptive, open-minded to that, but it didn't materialize right away, and I guess it took a while, and so I started talking about doing an instrumental record, and that turned out to be the Mind's Eye record.
Now, tell me about the recording of that album, because I'm always a little bit surprised. I guess my headset is in the modern day of recording where people are sending files around, but back then, I'm impressed with Shrapnel in that they always had good musicians in a studio recording these albums in a traditional way. I could talk to Richie Kotzen. He's talking about having, Steve Smith in the studio and how much it helped him and whatnot. What was your experiences like being, 21 years old and recording Mind's Eye for Shrapnel?
It was pretty amazing, but very stressful. I had written all my songs, and band guys had heard my material, and I went out there to California from Philadelphia airport and just rehearsed with Tommy Aldridge for 2 or 3 days, just going through the tunes. And then soon after that, the bassist came in to rehearse a day with us, and McAlpine came in to rehearse. And we just went right in and started doing it. We did the drums in 3 days, and, the bass in a couple. The whole record was finished from start to mix in 11 days. I think I had 5 days for all the guitar parts, which was totally insane because there were rhythms, doubling rhythms, melodies, harmonies, solos, just guitar everywhere. And I don't know how I did it so quickly. It definitely was rushed, and I had always wished I had more time on that record, but it is what it is, and lots of people seem to really, really like it and have been influenced by it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could never do that now. I could never go in and just rush through a record in 5 days like that.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference of when you're early 20s, and that's your opportunity, so you go for it.
I guess if you had to do something, yeah. I was pretty prepared. I knew everything note for note. All my stuff was written, so I was definitely prepared, but still.
And being at that point, working with Tommy Aldridge, how was that?
It was great. I liked his drumming, and he was a great guy to hang with. Very funny, always making funny jokes. And, it was great to hang around with him.
And at what stage was Tony at that point? Like, you had him in as a keyboard player, which obviously he's well known for a keyboard player as well as guitar, but what stage of his career was he at that point?
I think he had his first record just came out. I don't know if it was Maxim. No, Edge of Insanity had just come out.
And Mike Varney seems to like to pair up, a guitar player that a new guy with somebody who he's worked with before, like Richie Kotzen and Jason Becker or whatnot. Was that part of the strategy to team you up with somebody who's been through this before with him?
Well, it was just we needed a great keyboardist, and there he was. He lived right there in town, and he was an amazing player. So it's like, yeah, it was a no-brainer.
And that record went off and did really well. Was that a surprise for you?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to make a record and try to make a name for myself, and the record came out and just did really, really well. And I was out there doing clinics all over the world, endorsing Ibanez guitars, getting full-page ads in all the guitar magazines, seemed like everywhere I went in the guitar circle, people knew who I was, and it was definitely way more than I ever dreamed.
And you think that's, like back then, I remember that Shrapnel and the guitar magazines had a very tight relationship. Was that really what you think was the push?
I guess everything is a part of it, but I think, being the Ibanez endorser and having Ibanez do full-page ads for me in magazines, it all helped. Every little bit added up.
And did you tour for that record?
I did, clinics all over the world for Ibanez, but never really went out and did any shows with a band, unfortunately, which in retrospect seems like a big mistake. But, that's the way it was.
So you finished a cycle doing clinics for that. What kind of moves did you make next? Did you jump right back into the studio?
Yeah, ended up getting a deal with a bigger label, Squawk Records, who was distributed by Polygram at the time. And, that was the Time Odyssey record. So I wrote that record, recorded it, got that out there, and then we did go out and do some shows, some touring for that. And all through this process, I did guitar clinics also.
Did that album reach the same success as Mind's Eye?
At first, yeah. I think over the years, Mind's Eye has edged it out.
Right.
But, they were pretty equal at the time.
Now, when you did Meltdown, you were on Relativity. And obviously, that was Satriani. I think Steve Vai was with them. That must have been a big jump up as well, was it?
Yeah. It was like the perfect label to be with at the time, like a guitar-oriented label who had success with those other guys. So, yeah, it was a big opportunity.
And I remember that one. That was another big one in terms of it was all over the guitar magazines. Like, it was everywhere, it seemed.
Yeah, and the song Meltdown was being played on lots of radio stations around the country. I know, there was a major station in L.A. playing it 6 times a day, San Francisco, just scattered territories across the country. And I went out and toured, and I think the tour lasted 8 months.
Oh, wow.
We really did a lot of touring. And I had just come off being a member of Alice Cooper's band, too, for part of his tour.
Yeah, I want to get to that, too. Did you tour for Trash, or was it for Hey Stupid where you got your first opportunity with Alice Cooper?
It was Hey Stupid. I played a couple songs on the record, and I guess they liked what I did and asked me to come out and do some shows with him, join the band.
And he had just come off probably his biggest album previously, but for Trash. It was probably his biggest album in years anyway. What was it like touring on Hey Stupid?
It was a lot of fun. It was real theatrical, a great show. And, it was just great being in a rock band after being a solo artist and doing all these instrumental things. It was like a nice change, real cool to be part of a band.
Was that something that you decided, hey, maybe I want to do more of this? Or was it just a fun little change so you could get back to your focus of doing your own records?
No, it was something I always wanted to do also, be a part of a band. And, I've always wanted to do solo stuff, too. So, luckily, I've been able to do both over the years.
I think it was shortly after that Epic kind of absorbed Relativity. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. And that's where things kind of went, weird for a while.
Right, and that's also the grunge hit. The shred scene probably, dried up a little bit.
That's when everything changed. Yeah, Relativity ended up being like a rap label.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was insane.
So what did you do then as a, shred god? What moves did you make when the scene completely changed on you?
I was able to continue doing guitar clinics and make appearances and get labels to release my records. So after that, there was lots of time between Meltdown and Out of Nowhere, unfortunately. That record had been finished for quite a while. And I had the deal with Sony Epic that I had to get out of. And there was lots of legal stuff going on. It took a long time, but I eventually got away, got the record, and was able to release it on a label called Mayhem.
Why did you feel the need to get away from Epic? What was happening?
Oh, because they dropped everybody. All the Relativity stuff, and yeah, it's right when everything was changing, and I basically recorded the record for them, and they didn't want to release it.
Oh, okay. And then they were just holding it ransom, basically?
Pretty much, yeah. It was an ugly time period.
I remember Paul Gilbert around then released some solo records. I think that may have been on Mayhem as well. Was that part of Atlantic or something like that?
It was a label called Futurist Mayhem, and man, I forget who distributed them. It was so long ago. But yeah, it could be. They even had a Dio record.
Yeah, there's a bunch of labels around that time that were starting to pop up, I think, like Spitfire and whatnot, trying to kind of find the niche. If the big labels are going to drop all the rock acts, they were trying to build the niche out of it. Maybe they were one of them.
Yeah, CMC International.
That's right, yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. So in terms of that CD came out, was there anybody listening?
Yeah, I mean, the hardcore fans,
Yeah.
but there was no push anymore, and there was, like, no hope of, you know, getting a song on the radio anymore or anything like that. So it definitely became a new game.
Yeah. So how did you adapt to that?
I just kept doing what I love doing and writing songs and trying to grow. I mean, that's all you can do, really, to keep doing what you love doing.
So what led you back to Shrapnel then for the Maze?
As Varney came back to me, wanted to ask me if I wanted to do something with him, and it at that point made the most sense, actually, because he was still doing the guitar thing and nobody else was, and it was like, well, you know, there aren't many options anymore, and, you know, what he's saying sounds promising. You know, he's really interested in continuing to push these type of projects.
And he still does, you know. He's still making it work in that scene. How do you think he keeps it going?
I don't know. I just think he has a love for it also and a passion, and, you know, just continues to forge ahead. And maybe he did well enough back in the day when, you know, struck while the iron was hot, so maybe that gives him a little bit more freedom and flexibility. But I don't know. I'm just guessing.
So you did a few more records for him, and then came the UFO opportunity. How did that come about?
They were looking for a guitar player, and they had auditioned or checked out people in England. They wanted to find somebody from England, and that didn't quite work out, so they expanded their search to Europe, and that didn't quite work out, so they thought, oh, we got to go to America. So we had a mutual friend who was a sound man, guitar tech, who had worked with both of us. He heard they were looking, and he immediately thought I would be the right guy for the gig. And so he told them about me, and he came to my manager and, you know, told us that they were looking. And so the UFO manager started talking with my manager, and I was asked to send some, you know, a CD of some of my songs to Phil. So I just kind of compiled like 11 songs of mine, burned it to a CD, and sent it to him. And then, like, within 10 days or 2 weeks, I got a call saying, you got the gig. Phil really likes your stuff and wants you to do it.
Wait, so he hired you without playing with you?
Yeah, we never even played together. We started talking on the phone and coming up with song ideas. And the first time we met, we were actually in Hanover, Germany, to rehearse for recording the You Are Here record.
Wow. That cannot possibly be a common way to hire a guitar player.
Well, I think one of the things he was attracted to was that I wrote. I think he definitely wanted a guy who was a major writer, not just some hired hand to come into the band. He needed a songwriter, and he, you know, knew because I was a solo artist releasing my own records, and he could tell from what he heard that I had a lot of ideas as far as songs.
And it must also help that you brought a following to it too.
Right, I'm sure that did also.
Now, what was the chemistry like the first time you got into a room together? You're in a band and you've never jammed.
Well, Jason Bonham was there too. He was the drummer for that album. And there was Paul Raymond. And Pete Way was in the band, but he was having visa issues and couldn't get over there from America. And so I think he finally got there the day I was leaving, after all the guitars were recorded and, you know, we had done the rehearsals and all the work was basically done. And Pete shows up, and I met him for the first time. But it was a great vibe, you know. We had a lot of fun. There was a lot of joking, and it was awesome.
And after, was that your first band project since Alice Cooper?
Yeah, I believe it was.
And how was it at that point jumping back into something that was pretty much an established, you know, clearly a very established band, and they have the machine going? That must have been a bit of a, you know, somewhat of a relief in certain ways to step into that.
Yeah, it's always great to have a gig, and it's a lot easier to be a part of a band than it is to be a solo artist. As a solo artist, like, the weight of the world's on your shoulders. You know, you make all the decisions, And just with a band, there's more of a camaraderie, and it's something you do together, which I find comfort in that. It's just easier.
It seemed like the fans welcomed you with open arms. How did you feel the reception was?
I pretty much agree with that from the very beginning. It went really well. They just seemed to welcome me. I mean, there was always going to be some haters, here and there, and of course I witnessed some of that. But overall, I'd have to say, it was great. The fans were really good to me.
And was that at all a surprise to you?
I was just kind of oblivious to it. I wasn't even thinking. I was just trying to do my thing, write songs, play, tour, and didn't really give it much thought in advance.
You've been in the band for quite a while now. As you've gone through and done these records, do you feel like you're building up something new with this new lineup? Is it growing in your mind?
It seems to be. I mean, we've just continually toured since I've been in the band. It's been release record, tour, lots of shows, and we're just finishing a new record now. It's being mixed, and we have plans to go out in February to Europe and do a tour there, and then in April we're doing England and Ireland. So it's definitely gained momentum over the years. And I think this band has had problems in the past with ex-members where tours were canceled, and when I first joined, we had a lot of senior citizen moment here. We had to gain their faith back.
Okay,
we had to prove that we were reliable, and we had to do lots of damage control. And that took actually a while, a couple of years, to where promoters felt that they could really count on us and they weren't going to book us, and the tour was going to end before it started, which they had a lot of problems with in the past.
Now, I caught a show on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and people ate it up. People loved it.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Are you doing the Monsters of Rock cruise again?
I'd love to. I don't know if there's anything planned at the moment or not.
You see, I was hoping you're going to be on this year because Honeymoon Suite are on this year. So it would have been, you could have done like the Pepsi Commercial playoff.
There we go. That would be perfect. It's in February?
February, March usually is when it goes.
Okay. Man, I think we might be in Europe.
Oh, okay.
But I'd love to do that. I love that gig.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about the new record, the Red Zone Rider album? How did that come together?
I think it was last summer. I've known Kelly for a long time, and I met him in '99 when I opened for Michael Schenker on this tour of America, and he came out and sang on a few shows, and I just thought he was a killer singer, and kind of had him in the back of my mind as somebody I'd always like to work with someday. And then I was trying to get a band together, and I heard he was trying to get a band together, and he had already been talking to the guys at Magna Carta about doing a record, and I know those guys. I've done stuff with them in the past, and it just sort of all came together like that. I was trying to put a band together, he's trying to put a band together, and we heard about one another, and so we began to talk, and all we really needed to do was find the third piece, the drummer.
And how'd you find Scott?
Well, we started talking about different guys. There was a bunch of names, and we found out Scott was a lead singer, and we checked out his videos online. He was such a great singer. We thought that, and he writes songs. That's exactly what we need, not just a drummer to come in and lay down beats. We need a creative guy, and the fact that he can sing is a bonus. It's the perfect thing. And plus, he was from Vegas, which is where we were going to record the record, so all our ducks lined up in a row.
I was very surprised when I heard the record because it was very 70s kind of riff rock. It was awesome. That decision to go down that path, was that a natural thing, or did you guys decide going in that that's what you want to record?
Well, we knew we wanted to be a rock band, and that's pretty much it. And this type of thing is in all of our histories. I mean, it's not that different from the direction I took with the Meltdown record or the direction I take with UFO. I mean, that's a classic rock band. So, and it's just a lot of my influences from growing up, like Purple, Zeppelin, Grand Funk. And, we all have the same common inspiration, so it just made sense for it to go that way.
And did you write the songs together in the studio, or did you all come in with your own parts?
I had songs that I had already finished. I always have songs laying around because I'm always writing. But I spent like 2 weeks writing new songs with that in mind, with that band in mind. And so I showed up with at least like 10 or 11 finished demos. Kelly had like 4 or 5, but they were in his head. And we started with my stuff, and I would just play my demo of a song. Everybody would listen a couple times, and then we'd go in, grab our guitars, drums, bass, and start playing together and playing through it. And sometimes it ended up being the exact same arrangement as on my demo. We just basically learned it and maybe changed some of the feel or whatever. It's always better when you have a real drummer. And sometimes, we made arrangement changes and, changed the songs around a little bit.
It's got a very live feel. Did you record it single track at a time, or was it recorded
live?
Yeah,
we played all together. We tracked. And I had some keeper stuff. The bass had some keeper stuff. I mean, we were mainly going for the drums to get good drum tracks, but we were all there feeling the vibe together, and I think that's real important. I think one of the solos I did, I can't remember which it was, but was recorded, then in the beginning while we were tracking it together, and that's always a bonus. I mean, normally the reason that doesn't happen more is because you set up and get sounds for the drums and kind of just get a temporary sound for the guitar and bass, and but still I was able to get one solo that I liked, even though it might not have been the best tone.
How satisfied are you now that it's done?
I really like it. I like the job Kelly did, and I really dig it a lot. I like the songs a lot.
A personal favorite of mine is it Save Me? Yeah, Save It. Any chance of, any plans of releasing that as a single?
I don't know, but that's one of my favorites too. That's Kelly's song, and just from the time I heard his vocals, I fell in love with that song. Just awesome.
Yeah, that one really jumped out at me. And I love the guitar tone on it too. It sounds great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, there's some Strat in there.
And any plans to tour for this?
Yeah, we're trying to get some things together. I really want to go out there and hit the road. Unfortunately, we all have some other commitments first, like he's got some gigs with Ace Frehley, and I have some UFO gigs, but as soon as there's an opening, we want to get out there and play shows together.
And do you feel this is a one-album project, or is this the beginning of a new band?
I think it's the beginning of a new band. I can definitely see there being at least another record or two. I mean, I have a lot of material, Kelly does, and I'm just so happy with the way it came out that I think we should definitely continue.
You think there's any opportunity for you guys to open for UFO? You can open for yourself?
That'd be funny. It's not entirely out of the equation, but I don't know. We'd have to see.
And then future plans for UFO. So you say you have a new record.
It's coming out in January on SPV.
So it sounds like things are pretty busy for you then.
Yeah, and I have the solo tour coming in January with Uli Roth and this band called Black Knights Rising with Vinnie Appice and Craig Goldie. So I'm going to be out touring a lot very soon.
Are you going to be doing anything for the NOM show?
We're going to be doing shows right around there, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
We have a gig at the Anaheim House of Blues right during NAMM. And then we have Hollywood House of Blues during NAMM also.
And so that's a month-long tour?
Yeah, I think it's more like 3 weeks. It starts on the West Coast in San Diego, and then we kind of go up coast to California. There's one Vegas show in there, San Jose, and then we go up to Portland and Seattle, then kind of come across the United States in the north, and I forget where the shows are up there. And we do some in Chicago area, maybe Cleveland, and maybe even into Canada, and then we end in New York at BB King's.
Now, as a guy who's been at this for a while and has seen a shred scene build, peak, and then fall away, now to be at a point in your career where you've got, your big main steady gig, you've got a really fun side project, and you're still also finding time to get in some of your touring of your own instrumental music. How does it feel to be this busy in your career at this stage of it?
I'm very happy about it, but at the same time, it's very hectic, you know. But yeah, I'm not complaining at all.
And do you have any other future things on the horizon? Not that you don't have enough.
At the moment, I'm not thinking that far ahead. I also might want to do a record with some different singers, you know, write some songs together, but I'm not sure. I've been thinking about that for a couple of years now. We'll just have to see.
That was Vinnie Moore. I hope you enjoyed it. Join me next Monday for another episode of the Double Stop Podcast.